importantly, the FBI. Those were lies, plain and simple. And I am so sorry that the FBI workforce had to hear them, and I'm so sorry that the American people were told them.
Trump's response, accusing Mr. Comey of not telling the truth, came tonight from his attorney. And in other headlines here, millions of people across the UK are casting votes in the 2017 general election. The polls are due to close at 10 tonight. New video emerges of the 3 London terrorists filmed outside a gym days before the attack. It comes as 3 more arrests are made. So let's get more now then on the former FBI Director James Comey accusing Donald Trump's White House staff of lying. Mr. Trump's personal lawyer has rejected those allegations from James Comey. Well, we can speak now to our correspondent in Washington, Regina. And Regina, you were there actually in the room as James Comey was giving his testimony, extraordinary, historic testimony. What was the atmosphere like?
Well, firstly, I should just say that, of course, people have been watching this all over the world. But, of course, in Washington, this was described as a blockbuster moment. And so there were queues through the corridors of the Senate Hart building from as early as 5 in the morning as people lined up to try and get one of those public seats in the hearing room. Mostly interns who are queuing up. Some VIP seats in the rows in front of the press area that I was with. Interestingly enough, Ben, a lot of those were actually empty. So several congressmen and women and senators who were assigned those seats didn't actually turn up. I was about 4 rows behind James Comey, and I was struck by just how composed and relaxed he seemed to be when he was delivering his statement and actually answering those questions. He didn't seem to hesitate when he was asked questions by all those different senators in the room. And I think most strikingly, there was no notes on his table in front of him. He didn't really look down that much while he was talking to senators. And even though he had to answer questions for a couple of hours, he barely sipped on the 2 glasses of water that were on the desk in front of him.
And I am so sorry that the FBI workforce had to hear them.
Does it
and I'm so sorry that the American people were told
to a
them.
smoking gun that could potentially cause Trump's response, accusing Mr. Comey of not telling the truth, came tonight from his...
I think it's the latter. It's definitely
and in
damaging
other headlines. Terrorists filmed outside a gym days before the attack. It comes as 3 more arrests are made.
The Russian government. It's damning as well because it was an assessment of what James Comey thought of Donald Trump.
So let's get more now then on the former FBI Director James Comey accusing Donald Trump's White House staff of lying. Mr. Trump's personal lawyer has rejected those allegations from James Comey. Well, we speak now to our correspondent in Washington, Regina, you were actually in the room as James Comey was giving his testimony, extraordinary, historic testimony. What was the atmosphere like?
James Comey implying that Donald Trump, the President of the United States, say that of course people have been watching this all over the world, but of course, it's also damning because James Comey was absolutely unequivocal in his... Of those public at the moment. So it is damning in many ways. Mostly legally damaging, queuing up. It's unclear whether there would be a case for an obstruction of justice. I think it's highly
correct. If not, you can only hear me. Hold on a sec.
Now Washington correspondent.
So now you should be able to hear both me and the BBC.
Importantly, the FBI.
Can you hear both?
Plain and simple. And I am so sorry that the FBI workforce had to hear them. And I'm so sorry that the American people were told.
To a smoking gun that could potentially cause
Trump's
response, accusing Mr. Comey of not telling the truth, came tonight from his...
Hey guys.
Other headlines.
Ahmed Musa
I'm
Jibril,
hoping it's good for you.
American, but one
Good
of the
for
most
me.
popular online voices among Brits who go to fight with so-called
Outside
and
Jim
indeed whether or
Shays
not there
before
were
the attack.
ties between
Well, we've been trying to speak with Mr. Jibril about his preaching, but for now at least he's a pretty hard man to track down. Neighbours, though, have told us they thought he was nice and friendly and said they had no idea he produced such videos.
It's also damning to
But the FBI
Okay, so hopefully you can hear both at least.
Jibril, but never managed to find he'd actually broken the law.
He's very smart, you know.
I'm trying to work out a way that I can hear
They know there's a line that they can go up to and not cross that line.
I know, it's really trying to find a way that I can hear the PTC as well as you guys.
Unfortunately, in this country, it's not.
Ahmed Musa Jibril has been a nuisance to Muslims in this area too.
He will come
See, it's not
and say
echoing
things
as much
to
now.
him sometimes.
And hopefully
that,
you guys can hear
are,
me
you
too.
know, out
Correct.
separated from the religion. That's not the way.
If not, you
are
can
just
only hear me.
Even imams in the area say they've called for action against
Hold on
him.
a sec.
freedom of speech. Stop as a speech.
There we
but
go.
when you have
So
someone
everything should be sorted now.
act upon that, this
Sorry
is
about that,
crossing the
guys.
line. That should not
Just
be.
needed.
Do you think
I'm
there
doing
are
this very
others,
low-tech way anyway.
even in this
And
community, who are
now we can start
coming
debating.
close to that line?
There's many of them.
No nurse
Many
needs
of
to
them.
go to the
You
food
watch,
bank.
the internet is full of them.
Here, stopping those who aren't
Their
quite caught
wages are
crossing
adequate.
from preaching hate
Poor and
to actively
reckless
supporting
spending by
militants is
nurses,
tough,
not the government's
even
fault.
if they potentially inspire
Ooh,
violent
that's
acts.
controversial.
But that's
opinion.
not just a problem for this community,
I
and
mean,
certainly not just an issue for the US.
I think it
Aleem
was
McBall, BBC News, in
more
Dearborn,
than just.
Michigan.
I think there are
Parents of a
nurses out there
terminally
who
ill
struggle to get
baby
by.
are
I
said to be
think there's nurses
devastated
out there
after losing a
who struggle
legal
to just
battle in the
live
Supreme
because
Court
they
to take their
simply,
son to the United States for
simply don't have
treatment.
enough
Chris
time.
Gard and Connie Yates want 10-month-old Charlie Gard, who suffers from a rare genetic condition and has brain damage, to undergo experimental therapy. Our medical correspondent Fergus Walsh was in court and has been explaining the decision.
The Supreme Court has said doctors should continue life support for Charlie until 5 p.m. tomorrow night to give time for the European Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg to decide if it wants to hear the case. Now, if it doesn't, doctors at Great Ormond Street Hospital will be free after that point to switch off the mechanical ventilator that keeps him alive. Now, the judges said they had the utmost sympathy for Charlie's parents, who left the court
be that
distraught.
guy
They said it was Charlie's
not
best
reporting on the
interests
election
that were
today. He was
paramount. They said
a
that
reporter.
prolonging his life may simply prolong his suffering. The treatment being proposed was futile, and that's why he should be allowed to die with dignity.
That's Fergus Walsh reporting there, our medical correspondent. The Scottish Episcopal Church has narrowly voted to allow same-sex couples to marry in church. The decision means it is the only Anglican church in the UK to allow gay couples to marry. The vote to remove the clause that marriage is between a man and a woman was carried by the Synod in Edinburgh. Well, our correspondent Katrina Renton sent us this report.
Well, you join us at the General Synod of the Scottish Episcopal Church. Now, earlier here today, people voted in favour of allowing same-sex marriage in church. Now, this is the first of the... David Chillingworth, the Primus of the Scottish Episcopal Church. Now, tell us, first of all, the debate here was very dignified, and although everybody got their points across.
That's Fergus Walsh reporting there, our medical correspondent. The Scottish Episcopal Church has narrowly voted to allow same-sex couples to marry in church. The decision
Okay,
means
so
it is the
I
only
don't
Anglican
think
church
you
in
guys
the UK to
are
allow
hearing
gay
me.
couples to marry.
but you're hearing the output.
Well, you at the General Synod of the Scottish Episcopal Church. Now, earlier here today, people voted in favour of allowing same-sex marriage in church. Now, this is the first of the...
Let me try that instead.
David Chillingworth, the Primus of the Scottish Episcopal Church. Now, tell us...
Okay, so I don't think you guys are hearing me, but you're hearing the output.
Well, you at the General Synod of the Scottish Episcopal Church. Now, earlier here today, people voted in favour of allowing same-sex marriage in church. Now, this is the first of the...
Let me try that instead.
David Chillingworth, the Primus of the Scottish Episcopal Church. Now, tell us...
So they both work. Okay. Okay, so I don't think you guys are hearing me, but you're hearing the output.
Well, you at the General Synod of the Scottish Episcopal Church. Now, earlier here today, people voted in favour of allowing same-sex marriage in church. Now, this is the first of the...
Let me try that instead.
David Chillingworth, the Primus of the Scottish Episcopal Church. Now, tell us...
So they both work. Okay. Okay, so I don't think you guys are hearing me, but you're hearing the output.
David Chillingworth, the Primus of the Scottish Episcopal Church, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. And of course, the Scottish Episcopal Church has only got 34,000 members, so it's a relatively small organisation.
Now let me try and figure out how to get you guys a better picture.
Throughout the wider Anglican communion.
Output.
Katrina Renton
Output
reporting.
set,
And our latest headlines on BBC News.
Canvas size.
The sacked FBI director, James Comey, has accused Donald Trump's White House of lying when it said the bureau was in disarray. Mr. Trump, in turn, accused...
Isn't properly cooked.
And here I am back again, ladies and gents. Just after a few technical issues, there's bound to be. I'm doing a very low-tech stream here. I'm hoping you guys can now see me in good quality, see the BBC, and hear both in good quality. But we'll wait and see. There's only one person watching.
The virus then injects it with its DNA and makes a salmonella
Let me know
harmless.
if you
And if it stops
can
superbugs
hear me
developing in animals,
and
it
see
will reduce the
me.
risk to people.
It can be completely transformative for human health. There are many bacteria that we just can't treat now with antibiotics because they've become resistant to all the antibiotics we know. So using this natural enemy of the bacteria for specific diseases could really change the way that we treat infection in the future.
So far, they've shown that it works in the lab, and they freeze-dried the phage into a white powder. The next stage is to feed the phage to pigs to see if it works in practice. If it does, then it could begin to replace antibiotics, and that could greatly reduce the risk of superbugs developing on farms. Trials are due to begin later this year. If they're successful, doctors can then see if the phage virus can be used to treat people. Palab Ghosh, BBC News, Leicester.
Now we're going to go from pigs to dogs, actually, because it's election day and dogs have been joining their owners in turning out in force, it seems, at polling stations across the country. And predictably, the hashtag dogs at polling stations has been trending on social media. So let's just show you a little flavour. This is Phoebe in Manchester, waiting very patiently outside her polling station. Richard Walker tweeted this picture with the caption, "Someone's taking voting very seriously." Rue Goodwin says decisions are made by those that show pup. Sprocket
Oh
says
dear,
vote.
I feel really sorry for this guy.
And Jane Martinson says there's a queue to vote, but the dog has started to blend in. Mads the dog says, had to let big human and little human vote for me. I went in and helped them decide. Joe Doubleday says he and his dog were up early and casting their vote in Canterbury. There you go, doggy democracy in action. Now it's time for Meet the Author.
I feel sorry for
Ukraine
that
in the
guy.
winter of 1941. Jews being herded up and taken away, families pulled apart, and among the invading Germans, a strain of horror.
So make
and
sure you
guilty
press
understanding among some of
1080p,
the men who'd
guys.
been given the
I'm just
awful
going to put a
task.
light on so
Rachel
you can see me.
Seaforth's new novel, A Boy in Winter, stretches over only 3 days, through which you encounter all the emotions of the time. Horror, an instinct for survival, family loyalty, above all, perhaps, bravery. Welcome. What made you decide to go back to territory that you've explored as a novelist before, namely the events in the Holocaust?
Well, my first novel covered that territory, and to be honest, it's quite personal. I'm of German heritage, and although I thought it was very important to be writing about, I wasn't in a hurry to return to it. However, the times being what they are,
Let's join in the chat over in the
felt
stream.
myself finding parallels with the 1930s in current events far too often. And
Just because
and
I
then
can.
just by
I will be
coincidence,
checking out
I was
this
writing another
chat,
novel
so
entirely.
if you want to...
However,
There's still black bars around it,
times
it's
being
still
what they
bad
are,
quality.
I have felt myself
Black
finding
bars around
parallels
what?
with the 1930s
That's because I'm
in current
recording
events
my
far
desktop,
too often.
so there will be
And
black
then
bars
just
around.
by coincidence, I was writing another novel entirely.
As for the bad quads,
By coincidence, I ended up
does
reading a
say
case study
that it's
of a
supposed to
man
be
called Willy Aron,
1080p.
who was a German engineer, and who did not hold with the Nazis. He regarded the Nazis' rise to power with dismay, in fact,
2 seconds.
and did all he could to avoid the draft. And the way he avoided the draft was
because I'm not recording on 2 different streams. I'm recording my entire
and I thought that that was the character and the situation both lended themselves so well to my
so
preoccupation.
you guys,
what would you do if you were a person like me?
there's not a lot I can do to make it much better quality than this. Sorry, I'm talking weird because I can hear myself. It's really weird.
And it takes great courage not to just go along.
Absolutely. And although not all of my characters show courage, of course.
Indeed, they don't. I suppose it's fair to say that you would find it easier to get into
Would
the
you
mind
prefer
of
to
someone
just
who's
see
facing
the main
extinction,
thing and not
need
see
for
me?
preservation, than it is to get inside the mind of someone who decides that they've got to go along with this horrendous policy which they're charged with executing?
Yes, and I think this is definitely a novel which I could not have written as a younger woman. It's an accumulation of reading and research and thinking. I mean, it's almost 20 years since I published my first novel, which was about the Holocaust, and this is really the culmination of a lot of thought since then and a lot of reading.
What have you discovered in writing it? I don't mean
Vote Labour.
factually, historically.
What does that look like? Everybody looks like
my goodness,
looks like they're gonna vote Labour.
Well, I think what I really,
but I'm still not sure.
I knew this before, but I really see it now. Is
looks
that
like Labour
not,
could quite do well
evil that made the Holocaust
from
people,
the online world,
but
I could be
with all
wrong.
their blind spots and with all of, and they're creatures of their time, are capable through thoughtlessness, through lack of perspective, and through cowardice of doing great harm.
You say you found parallels with the 30s of all kinds with what's happening around us today. What kinds of parallels? I mean, apart from the obvious one that there's a lot of violence around.
The first thing that happened to German Jews was that they had the protection of the law removed from them. And I see, although we have not done this in such aggressive terms in this country, we have, over a period of years, removed the protection of the law from various people who live here. And as soon as the tenor of the times is less benign, those people are at risk. I mean, I see that I'm a child of foreigners. Neither of my parents ever took British citizenship. My mother was German, my father was Australian. I, just by dint of being born here, am a Brit. I have a British passport. Children of my children's generation, children who were born on the same street as my children, two parents who are both foreign, do not have that any longer. And as soon as, now Brexit has been triggered, and as soon as anything shifts any further to the right, I worry for those people.
This book is a book about a tragedy, and it shows people behaving very badly, but in a way it's a very hopeful story.
So there is Otto Paul. He is, he's a middle-aged man who finds great questions asked of him, and he does his best. Not always the right thing, but he does his best, and I do think, I do find hope in humanity as well as fear.
What are the advantages of writing a story which is so compressed in terms of time? Everything happens in 3 days. As a writer, what does that give you? Ruled by the Nazis in the months preceding, and the years, in fact, but they divided and ruled very effectively. And then at points where they come in with the SS and actually execute what they wanted to execute all along, the groundwork has been laid and people have been pitted against one another very, very effectively. And people say, so this is what it was all about. This is what it was all about, and now I know, and now, my goodness, I have got to step up or I've got to run away. And it may be too late. Do you think you'll go back to this territory yet again? I wouldn't discount it, but I feel like I've written the book that is pertinent to now. Pertinent to now, and also the book. Yes. You must feel very deeply about some of these things. I do, and the writing of it is not so difficult, actually, as the talking about it afterwards. This is what I found with The Dark Room, my first novel, which was that actually writing is a process of coming to an understanding, coming to love your characters, coming to empathise with them, and to write what feels true. And then talking about it afterwards is a whole other process. And why do you find that difficult? Because it's often not a conversation that is easy, and it's often not a conversation. You're often asked for your opinion rather than it being an exchange, and that can be very disquieting. Because it's not an opinion that you're putting down on the page, it's the explanation of feeling, I suppose, the exploration of character. It's the explanation of humans, absolutely, rather than, me, Rachel Seifert, what do I think of this political situation. You're not writing a political tract. No. But you hope that it might have at least as much power as one. Yes, I do. I hope that it chimes with people. I do hope people read it and reflect on what it says about today in particular. Rachel Seifert, author of A Boy in Winter. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hello there, a glimmer of sunshine perhaps today, but also a fair bit of rain around too. We've got showers running in behind the main area of rain that's continuing to work its way northwards through Northern Ireland up into Scotland, coming to rest in the northwest of Scotland. Clearer spells developing overnight, a few showers continuing towards many western parts of England and Wales. It shouldn't get too cold, 11 or 12 degrees. Tomorrow we'll see the Northern Ireland. Pleasant in the sunshine, temperatures close to average for the time of year, and probably around 22 or 23 lingering for a while in Scotland, but more particularly for northern England, parts of the Midlands, Wales and the southwest. If you're underneath that rain, not too pleasant, quite muggy in the southeast.
Hello, I'm Ross Atkins. Welcome to Outside Source. A month ago, the director of the FBI was fired by Donald Trump. Today, he gave his side of the story. James Comey